NACLComicCons podcast with Phil Yarbrough, creator, artist, author of the Dark Matter universe, here to talk about the business of being an artist. This is a NACLComicCons podcast. We dive into the Comic-Con world. More than comics and cosplay, we bring you the stories of artists, authors, cosplayers, vendors, and exhibitors. We call it Comic-Con Podcast. We did not have a meeting on that name. Follow us on Facebook or hit our website, NACLComicCons.com. All right, we've got Phil in studio. You're in the NACL studio, and we're going to talk about the business of Comic-Cons and something that we touched a little bit on, and then in an email, investing in yourself, the supplies, the advancements going from just pen and paper all the way to 3D printing. Kick it off, Wyatt. You had the first good question.
My first question, what in your mind was your best investment?
I would have to say print media, such as prints and stickers. When you have original art for sale, and we'll get into kind of how I started with that and how I progressed with it, you got to charge a fair amount, And when you have high dollar items, it can be cost prohibitive for some people. But if you're able to do prints, like of digital art or of your traditional illustrations, you're able to do a series of those, $5 to $10, maybe $20 for those prints. And suddenly people who are less fortunate and love art can afford it. And that opens you up to a much wider market. And so I have to say for sure, print media and stickers, anything that's a printed piece of art is probably the best investment I've made.
Well, yeah. I think that also is something that you get the first time buyer. It's a minimal investment. Mm-hmm. And now you've got a fan.
Yes.
And then hopefully they go from spending $5 to $30 or whatever the progression is.
Yeah,
for you.
It can. Some people just really like to collect the prints because, like you said, it's minimal investment. They get something cool, for a reasonable amount of money that's not going to break the bank. I've got more people that collect my prints than collect my originals. I do have a handful of people that do regularly collect my originals. There's one individual who's been collecting my work since the beginning in 2018. He's got probably 35 or 40 of my originals.
Ooh, really?
And
Wow.
if your work is quality and you know how to interact with your fan base and with people, you're going to have a handful of dedicated followers. But you really want to make sure your audience and accessibility to your art, price-wise, and even on social media, you want your accessibility, regardless of what form of that accessibility, to be as wide as possible.
Absolutely. And I think that for us, when we go to a Comic-Con, Kim has price pointed her dolls, and I think it was a lady that had bought a doll, came around, and she bought more. I mean, that's the idea, is that she was totally bought in. And now you go from maybe starting out where you can charge $30. Now she can charge $50, $60 because now she's created a demand. Wyatt, what do you got now?
What I got now?
What's your next question, buddy?
My next question,
jotted these down.
This whole selling and the business aspect, what are the steps leading up to selling your art?
Oh, good gosh! Learning how to draw is the biggest one.
Definitely.
I mean, obviously, and I do want to touch on that a little bit because there are folks that I've seen who are, doing art as amateurs, just getting into it, and they immediately go to capitalism. They want to sell it.
I'm
they
not
want
a
to sell it.
capitalist yet.
They want to sell it because they want to have a business and they want it now because they see the opportunity. But I'm going to tell you, you want to learn as much as you can before you try to turn it into a business. Because if people don't like your art because they don't think it's of a high enough quality to spend money on, you're going to develop a reputation for being what people will unfortunately perceive as a low-quality artist.
Definitely.
That does make sense.
I definitely agree on that fact because, like everything else, art is a skill. You have, I'm doing art. It's kind of,
You'll get there.
Yeah, I'll get there. I'll get there some maybe.
Well,
and I don't want to. I don't want to sit here and bash anybody. You know what I mean? But I'm simply talking about public perception. If you're drawing stick figure cartoons and that's your honest form of expression, that is valid.
That is
I want to point that out too.
Yeah, that's me.
It's valid. Come on, you're valid.
As long as it's like honest expression, I feel like art of any kind is going to be valid and genuine.
When you see like around our house, and I'm going to expand on this. We're going to be going in a different direction, so we'll have to come back. So I take pictures. I don't know, and I've asked this question: when is it art? You know, because I don't ever consider myself an artist. I'm a stick figure guy on a good day. But then I look at some of the photos I take, and I think that's really good. I'm not trying to be arrogant. It pleases me.
You're proud of yourself on certain ones. Yeah, and that's fine. That's good. That's a good feeling to have, and it's okay to admit that.
And then is that art? And I think that whatever you do, if you appreciate it first, I think it's the first step. But then I think you talk about the commercial. There's a big difference between doing anything and then making a business out of it.
Yes,
definitely.
Owned so many businesses, it always starts in the basement. Well, Kim and I, we had a 1-bedroom duplex, and we started a business that went national. You got to be good at that before you even go outside of the house. And right now, we're looking at expanding NACL. We got to be good at it. But I think it's the same as art.
Definitely.
That's interesting because I wouldn't have thought of that.
And I got to tell you too, you know, when we touched on, you know, learning to draw, I don't want to just leave it there because, like, I want to talk about, you know, 10 years ago in 2015, almost 9 years ago, getting close to 10.
It is.
You know, my work was much less quality. And I'm going to tell you what helped me was the explosion of social media.
Okay.
Oh, definitely.
The amount of people putting art tutorials online.
Oh, okay.
You know, like on, you know, whether it be the mainstream sites or just video sites like YouTube or Facebook, you know, any of those. There's going to be artists out there that want to teach you how to draw. And that if you pay for your internet or you got an unlimited data plan on your phone, hop on places that have art channels because they are abundant. And right now we're seeing the results of that in the younger generation of artists.
That makes sense.
There are people who are 18 to like 22 years old or younger who are drawing at the level that I am or faster because they had access to quality tutorials on the internet at a very young age. I had art books that were of various quality, you know, and that's kind of the trouble. You'd want to, back in the day, you know, you'd buy an art book and it may or may not help you depending on your skill level or the quality of the book. And so like right now, if you pay for internet or data, just learn how to draw from other artists doing tutorials online and you will get there fast.
Is that something you do?
Oh, I do that all the time. Like,
Yeah.
But-
so much free information out there. Expertise
so
at your
nice.
fingertips is amazing.
Yes.
And that art book, and for you younger people, you'll have no understanding of this. Anything you wanted to learn, you buy a book. You could be 10 pages in it and realize it's garbage. It's not gonna
It's
help.
garbage or it's too far beyond you and you bought an expert level book when you're back at the intermediate and you can't grasp it yet.
Yeah.
And, you know, with art tutorials online, they break it down so concisely so that any level of artist is going to be able to understand. And so that's kind of the big thing, you know, go online, learn how to draw on the internet if you have internet or data. I feel like most people have a phone, you know, get the tutorials you can online and learn from there. That is my advice because that's what I started to do when social media exploded in the early 2010s. And I got better, faster than what I ever had when I was doing just books.
That's interesting.
But, you know, from when it exploded in 2015, 2016, you know, within 2.5 years, I opened my business, you know, and I might show some art from that era. It wasn't bad. It's just there was a certain degree of this person is trying to be a comic book artist and they're kind of there, but there's some things that are off, you know, and, you know, within a few years, I was able to get to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm ready to get myself out there.
That's interesting. And why you, so I watch one shorts, and it keeps popping up, where it'll show you a hand that somebody draws, and then he shows you the correct way to do it, and he always says you're welcome at the end of it. But I watch it just because I'll never use it. But he's teaching these mechanics within drawing that you don't think about when you're not an artist, that there are mechanics to it.
Yes.
Definitely.
And it's like, you know, mathematics and understanding perception and all that, that's a skill. That is a huge skill set. Plus, then you got to have the creative side. So what is selling art at a Comic-Con versus Third Thursday? What's that look like?
So, at Third Thursday or small art events, street art, I think Emporia has their first Friday, Wichita has their first Friday. There are comparable events all over central Kansas. People on the street may not be there for the kind of thing that you want to do. There will be comic fans in the crowd, but they may never even get over to where you're at. So I would say, those local town events are riskier than a Comic-Con because you may have fewer people than would be interested. I've been fortunate enough to always have it be worth my time, make a sale or two, or, build my social media following. If I do one of those two things, I consider the event a success. It's great if I can do both.
Definitely.
But, the crowd is not there for art specifically. Not always, anyway.
Yeah.
A lot of them are, but sometimes they're there for, like, at Smallville Festival, they're there for the costume contest. They brought their kids. Or, this month, Dog Days of Summer was the theme. They're there to walk their dogs and just look around. And it just varies on what the theme of the event is and whether or not someone is a nerd. Basically, and not everybody who goes out there is going to be into that kind of thing. But if you go to a Comic-Con, those are your people pretty much guaranteed, And so you've got your target audience in a Comic-Con, like for 90 to 100% of the crowd is going to be there for your kind of thing. Yeah. But if it's a Third Thursday or a First Friday, it's great and I love doing it, but you're going to have like a much smaller percentage of people that are going to be into the kind of thing that you're doing.
Do you see it in their face when they're walking by? Because everybody's looking through the booth, and I can remember especially with Kimberly and Paulie's stuff, and you could tell in their face right away.
Oh yeah, for
sure,
sure. And also, don't be afraid to just greet people who are walking by because that'll get them to look at you, and then they'll look at your table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just say, hey, how are you doing?
We've talked
Literally,
about that.
I just do that constantly. I just ask people how they are. And a lot of the time, that's enough to get people to stop for a moment and see. And a lot of the time, they'll stick around.
Well, I think that's why Brent Fairchild was so successful with our family. Our guys were young. Man, Paul was probably 10, started buying stuff from him, but he engaged them as a fan. And what we talked about this before, just so many people looking at their phone, not paying attention. Man, you want to buy from somebody you like.
Yeah.
Right out the
You
bat.
really do. And you want to, I don't even necessarily treat people like a fan. I just try to treat them like a neighbor.
That's a good way to put it.
You know what I
That's a good
mean?
way
And because if you're assuming that they're a fan already, then sometimes that can come across as, oh, you should definitely like my work, my hot stuff, But, if you know somebody already and they have, supported your work in the past, treat them like a fan. Treat them like a loyal customer. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Give them that special treatment. Pay extra close attention to them because they have given you the support in the past. And if you treat them right, they'll continue to.
Yeah, we had to send an email today to one of our really good vendors from the VidCon that we're full for the Con.
Yeah.
And that hurts. I mean, because we generally get on a level with a lot of these vendors. And we call it the Chick-fil-A experience whenever you greet somebody. But then the next thing is vesting in their business and hoping they do well. And when you have that engagement, you're getting buy-in. And I think that you've got that figured out in spades.
I'm getting there. Like I said, it just depends on the kind of event. I'm still figuring out social media. I struggle with the consistency on social media. And that's something you really need because these algorithms, if you're not staying engaged, right, they'll come after you and squash you. And unfortunately, that's kind of something I've experienced a few times. I've had to take health breaks before, from art and from events and just for the sake of myself. And I come back and it's a fraction of the people seeing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to work on consistency. And I did switch my account over to like a business account so that in the future, when I need to take a break, I can just come back, pay for one of those micro ads, the micro transaction ads and just boost it immediately and get back to where I was. And so I'm going to start doing that, anytime I need to take a break. That way I'm not essentially starting from the bottom and working my way up again.
Yeah, and you can also schedule.
Yes.
That's a neat tool to have. If
I've
you're
started
architect.
doing
It's
that
very-
too. That's a big thing because if you're a night owl, like I am a lot of the time, you don't want to be posting at 3 a.m. unless you want people on the other side of the planet to see your stuff. That can be a good thing, though.
You don't want your
Yes.
Indian market?
That can be a good thing.
Yes.
Like I've had, I was a night owl. Like, screw it. I'll just post it. It's 2:30 in the morning, but we'll see what happens. That's how I met some of my fans in the UK.
Really? Oh, okay. That's
So, I interact with them every once in a while and message them. We talk, but sometimes that can actually be a strategy is to post in the middle of the night. As long as the person looking at your stuff speaks your language, they'll be able to find your work and interact with you. And that can be beneficial. You want people who are in your immediate area to see it. Like if you're in Kansas like we are, you kind of want to post in Central Time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
I bet on that right now.
it sometimes it's beneficial to post in Eastern or Pacific time. It just depends on what you're trying to do. There's a strategy. You can justify a strategy in so many different ways. That's kind of the thing where it's almost hard for me to compute because there's so many options on how to go about it.
Because the world is small. You talked about language being a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
3 years from now, it won't be.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely will not.
The translate apps especially with the advent of the artificial intelligence figuring out context of speech and being able to write essays and all that. Yeah, it's not going to be a barrier for much longer. We'll have the universal translators from like sci-fi shows where all the aliens are somehow speaking English. We'll have that, no doubt.
That's going to be awesome because we can then travel. I'm afraid to travel because I can't communicate. And you talk about the time zone differences. That's just a small thing, but it does make a difference when you're battling Facebook's algorithm, YouTube, or any of the medias that you're trying to get on.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've had experience with that. We're now looking. Now this is secret, so you can't share this with anybody.
Ooh, dirty secret.
We're planning a road trip after the June Comic-Con. Now our big con is Hutch Comic-Con, June 21st, 2025.
2025.
We're already having vendors buying in booths.
Yes, I've seen that. Yeah,
Because just people were kept inundating us. And then we thought, let's hit the road and do 3 cons in a month going to Seattle.
Oh, wow.
And so we're looking at Cheyenne, Great Falls, Montana,
Mm-hmm.
and then Mount Vernon, which is north of Seattle.
This guy forgets he's 52 sometimes, so I don't know if he's going to keep up.
So I've got to call a guy.
Mm-hmm.
I went to call him yesterday,
Nothing.
Mountain Time.
Yeah.
Man.
And I've done that in business before. I've called the dude. I've had a conversation with him at 6:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then he reminds me, he goes, I'm West Coast. Never call my cell phone again.
Yeah.
You got to really be careful. What do you got, Y? What's your next thing you got on your mind? What's in the noodle?
Okay, this kind of jumps back to like greeting people when they come to your table.
Sure.
Do you think being introverted would like stop people from doing that? Like from more of the like just being a business entirely?
It can be a barrier. The trick is to mentally trick yourself because I'm somewhat introverted. You got to find a way to open yourself up to talking about something you're passionate about. I have found for me what's helped my introversion is to find a way to steer it towards my passion because I'm there to market my passion, sell my passion with art. And if I can find a way to quickly steer the conversation into, that interest, and that's what I'm there to do anyway, that will help keep me going. You know what I mean?
I feel you.
And people will let you know pretty quickly if they kind of just want to move on. But if you get the right kind of person, they'll ask you questions, and they'll be targeted questions. They'll be specific. And I find that specificity of what they're asking helps me stay in a flow and on track to market myself to people at these events. But there are some times where it's too much and I'm anxious and I have a hard time doing that. And it absolutely is a barrier. And, all I can say is just try to mentally, and I hate to say go to your happy place, but try to get into your comfort zone mentally, and then project that comfort zone outward around you when you're talking to people.
Okay, I feel like that's a great advice because I've seen like a lot of artists are like mainly introverts.
Sure. Yeah, no. I mean, like we as artists, we exist at a desk most of the time or in our beds with our sketchbook, whatever. In my case, an iPad, I'll lay on the bed and draw on the iPad sometimes.
I was literally doing that earlier.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a very solitary lifestyle at times, and it can be tricky to remember to come up for air and say hi to people. And so if you've been, grinding out art for an event for weeks leading up to that event, and then suddenly you have to talk to people and you've had no time to remember how to be social, yes, that can be a nightmare.
That's going to clip you.
Yeah, it's gonna make it harder for you. So you got to remember to flex those social muscles as much as you can, so that you're not caught struggling when it's crunch time and it's time to perform.
Definitely.
Let's step back a little bit with that. Becoming a commercial artist, you talked about that gap there. Having the confidence in what you do. That's another thing that with young artists, we've seen a lot of first-time artists, and I mean, literally had a conversation with one at the Big Con. He just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
This is his rodeo, and I went and looked at it, and I told him, you've got a home run.
Yeah.
And trying to find that confidence.
So I have found that the biggest thing that I have done to help myself with that is to try to, and people say in a business sense, separate the art from the artist. Some people believe in that concept, others do not. And I can understand both sides there. You want to separate yourself from your art so that you can have an objectivity to it. You almost want to be like, try to approach it from the outside looking in, but at yourself, because you need to be able to, or at least train yourself to be able to analyze yourself at an objective level, right? You don't want to criticize yourself, but you do want to analyze your problem spots to see how you can improve it, right? And then recognize your successes in your work. And it does require a certain mental objectivity and an emotional detachment that you will have to train yourself into in order to analyze your work and recognize when you're ready and when you're not. And that's very tricky for some people to do. It was tricky for me to do it, but you can again find tutorials online on how to remain tutorials on how to get into a professional objectivity mindset, and then analyze problems. I think that those kind of strategies can really help and assist artists who are unsure. You just got to get into that different frame of mind, and that has helped me tremendously.
So I'm following this because you're talking about the mechanics of a business, essentially, where we have the luxury. We've got four of us. We've got Kimberly, we got Paulie, we got Wyatt, and myself. And I'm the
backbone.
Guy, you are the backbone. And where I'm in a big hurry. I'm the push guy. Where Paul, you're not the push guy, are you?
No, not really, honestly.
And he's the guy that can check me, right? And he's the one that makes you step back, and then Kim can sit there and objectively challenge it. Whereas an artist, you're the sole deal. That's interesting that there's resources out there that you can use.
And, another big resource is if you're trying to figure out what your trouble spots are and still struggling, there are groups on social media, and there are old Web 2.0 forums. I used to be, I'm not associated with them anymore, and I haven't posted there in probably about 10 years, but I remember an old website called penciljack.com. It's a forum for artists, like a message board, an old school style message board. And the whole point of the message board was to post your art and have people critique it, free critiques, tell you what your trouble spots are and how you can learn and grow. And there's still groups like that online on social media. You got your Facebooks, you got your Instagrams, you got all that. You got the groups there. You can find them where you can post your art and then specifically say, I welcome all comments, whether they be positive or negative. If something you don't like, let me know.
Yep.
If there's something you do like, let me know there too.
Yeah, that's a good way to learn.
And you really just want to invite polite criticism, honest criticism that's not there to rip you apart, not there to make you feel bad. And a lot of artists, will be happy to share that.
Yes.
Some are like, oh, you want a free critique, and those are the people that are kind of uppity, but they're not always. It's not always bad. You can find the people that are willing to share and help you grow.
Yeah, knowing what's constructive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the first. And understanding constructive means being self-aware.
Yes.
And then to challenge yourself to take that. Let's take a quick break. Talk a little bit about the Hutch Boo Comic Con coming up.
Boo.
What? Hutch Boo Comic Con coming at you October 26th in the Kansas State Fairgrounds. Only $5 for adults. Ages 15 and under free with an adult. Free events like zombie shootout, robot racing, ping pong ball roll. All those come with prizes. We kick off a kids costume contest at 1 p.m. Adult cosplay contest at 6 p.m. All those with cash prizes. Over 60 artists, authors, cosplayers, and vendors. Come join us at the Hutch Boo Comic Con. Follow us on Facebook, NACLComicCons.
Comic Cons.